The warehouse clerk's hands shake, not from fear, from hunger. It's March 1945, and Takeshi hasn't eaten real rice in 4 months. Around him, wooden crates stamped with imperial markings sit empty. The requisition orders say 12 tons departed for Tokyo yesterday. The scales record only 7. Someone is stealing. Someone is always stealing now. In the dim light, he notices something else. The shipping manifest lists destinations that no longer exist. Factories bombed into ash, ports where no ships dock anymore. The entire supply chain, meticulously documented in triplicate, leads nowhere. But here's what grips him by the throat. The forms keep arriving. Every morning, new requisitions, new quotas, new production targets for industries that stopped producing months ago. The paperwork flows perfectly while the nation starves. A supervisor enters. Takeshi bows. The southern shipment? Submarine, the man says flatly. Another one. That's the 3rd convoy this week. The supervisor doesn't look surprised. Nobody does anymore. But then he says something strange. The Navy reported the convoy arrived safely. Takeshi stares at him. They both know it's a lie. The Navy knows it's a lie. High Command knows. Maybe even the Emperor knows. The machinery of empire churns on, grinding paper into pulp, turning lies into official truth, converting a nation's wealth into nothing. Outside, a neighborhood association leader shouts about duty and sacrifice. Inside, Takeshi looks at the empty shelves and realizes something terrifying. Japan isn't losing the war at sea. Japan dissolved from the inside. Bureaucracy documenting collapse, officials filing reports on vanished resources, an empire that kept perfect records of its own suicide. The real enemy wasn't American carriers, it was arithmetic. And arithmetic doesn't negotiate. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns, and in Tokyo, staff officers celebrate a perfect strike. Admiral Yamamoto stands silent. He knows what the cheering men don't. Japan just declared war on a nation that produces more steel in a month than Japan manufactures in a year. The numbers are brutal. America's 1941 steel production, 75.4 million tons. Japan's 6.4 million. Oil? America pumps 1.4 billion barrels annually. Japan imports nearly everything. 85% of petroleum, 90% of gasoline, 100% of aviation fuel from territories now cut off or contested. An intelligence officer named Takabe Sokichi drafts a report nobody wants to read. In it, he calculates Japan's merchant fleet lifespan under wartime conditions, 18 months, maybe 24 if they're lucky with convoy losses. He's wrong. It takes 11. The strategy seemed perfect on paper. Seize the southern resource zone, Dutch East Indies oil, Malayan rubber, Philippine minerals, create a self-sufficient empire, a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. But strategy requires logistics. Logistics requires shipping, and shipping requires controlling 3,000 miles of open ocean against an enemy with unlimited industrial capacity. Japan's entire pre-war merchant fleet, 6 million gross tons, barely enough to supply the home islands during peace. Now they're feeding an empire stretching from Burma to the Gilbert Islands. A factory manager in Osaka receives new orders, triple aircraft production. He doesn't tell his superiors the truth. His aluminum stockpile will last 6 weeks. After that, he'll be melting down civilian goods. After that, nothing. Meanwhile, neighborhood associations organize. Tonarigumi, groups of 10 to 15 households, formalized in 1940,
monitoring each other for defeatist talk, distributing increasingly phantom rations, preparing for sacrifices that seemed noble in December 1941. By January 1943, they're preparing for something else entirely: survival.
The telegram arrives at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Nagoya Aircraft Works. Increase monthly airframe production to 2,500 units. Chief Engineer Nakamura reads it twice. Then he does the math. It's impossible. Not metaphorically impossible, mathematically, physically impossible with current machinery capacity. Unless. He gathers his team. The solution is radical. Outsource everything. Instead of manufacturing complete aircraft in centralized plants, fragment production across hundreds of small suppliers. Engine parts from Gifu, landing gear from Shizuoka, hydraulics from a converted textile mill in Kyoto. The factory floor transforms. By mid-1944, Mitsubishi coordinates 847 different suppliers across 4 prefectures. It's a masterpiece of industrial engineering, a vast spiderweb of production, each thread vital, each junction dependent on rail lines, road systems, shipping schedules that must synchronize perfectly. And it works. Monthly production climbs, 306 airframes in January 1939. By May 1944, 2,541. The production miracle earns citations, medals, increased quotas. Nakamura watches his creation with growing dread. He's built something magnificent. He's also built something catastrophically fragile. One night he confides in a junior engineer, "We've made a system with 847 points of failure." "Nonsense," the young man replies. "We've created efficiency." Nakamura doesn't argue. Instead, he studies American bombing patterns. B-29s hitting steel plants, port facilities, rail junctions. They're not just destroying targets, they're studying the network, identifying bottlenecks. In December 1944, earthquakes damaged 17 supplier facilities around Nagoya. Within weeks, production drops 40%, not from the earthquake itself, but from broken supply chains, machinery parts that can't reach the assembly line, special components stuck in damaged warehouses. The smell of welding torches fills the workshop. Acetylene, hot metal, machine oil mixing with the acrid scent of anxiety. By February 1945, monthly production, 1,260 aircraft. The miracle is over. The spiderweb is burning.
USS Tarpon, February 8, 1943. Radar contact at 10,000 yards. Commander Wallace closes to 1,500 yards. 4 torpedoes, 4 hits. The Tatsuda Maru, 23,000 tons, former luxury liner converted to troop transport, sinks in minutes. 2,000 soldiers and civilians drown in the dark Pacific. In Tokyo, the Navy files a report. Convoy arrived safely at Truk. All vessels accounted for. The lie cascades through the system. Families receive letters about sons serving honorably in the Pacific. Production quotas remain unchanged. Someone must supply those troops at Truk. Rationing calculations still assume those 23,000 tons of shipping capacity exists. On submarines across the Pacific, American crews develop a rhythm: silent running, target acquisition, fire, dive, evade, surface, hunt again. Commander Charles Lockwood writes in his patrol log, "It's not like surface warfare. The enemy doesn't see us coming. Ships just disappear." And they do. The Osama Maru, the Kamakura Maru, the Osaka Maru, names that meant something: pride, power, prosperity, becoming just numbers in a ledger of loss. An Osaka factory worker named Kenji notices something odd. The daily rice ration shrinks just slightly. 2.2 go becomes 2.2 go. He mentions it to his wife. She hasn't told him yet. The fish ration ended last month. She's been serving tree bark soup flavored with soy sauce memory. Their daughter, 7 years old, asks why she's always cold. There's no coal for heating. The explanation, we're saving it for the factories. But the coal isn't reaching factories either. It's at the bottom of the East China Sea, along with petroleum, rubber, steel ingots, machine tools, aluminum ore, copper wire, everything Japan seized in 1942 that was supposed to make the empire self-sufficient. Submarines aren't sinking ships, they're severing arteries, and the empire is bleeding.
Imperial General Headquarters, June 1943. Admiral Koga reviews convoy loss reports that contradict Navy public statements by catastrophic margins. Publicly, minimal shipping losses. The American submarine threat remains manageable. Actually, 305 merchant vessels, 1.335 million tons, vanished. He drafts a memorandum requesting 360 anti-submarine frigates. The response allocates 40. Why? Because shipyards are building aircraft carriers for a decisive battle that's already been lost. Because resources flow to offensive capability while defensive infrastructure collapses. The Grand Escort Command Headquarters finally forms, November 1943, 2 years before war begins. Too late, too small, too underfunded. Meanwhile, American code breakers cracked the Maru Code in January 1943. Now they're not hunting blind. They know sailing dates, routes, cargo manifests. Submarines position themselves at choke points. Convoy routes become death sentences. A logistics officer calculates Japan's resource balance. The nation needs 10 million tons of annual shipping capacity to maintain current operations. Current capacity, 6 million tons, and dropping by 1,200 tons daily. Somewhere between Singapore and Yokohama, a tanker named Tonan Maru No. 2, 19,262 gross tons, takes 3 torpedoes. The oil Japan desperately needs sinks faster than burning debris rises. Intelligence analysts in Washington study the patterns. They're not just tracking sinkings, they're mapping systemic collapse. Each lost tanker means grounded aircraft. Each munitions ship equals ammunition rationed training. Each transport sacrifices troop reinforcements. The calculation becomes elegant in its horror. Sink enough ships and the entire empire starves. No invasion necessary, just patient, methodical destruction of maritime logistics. In Osaka, factory managers receive orders to increase production 30%. They laugh bitterly. Aluminum stockpiles? 3 weeks. Steel plate? 6 weeks. Machine tools arriving 6 months late because the ships carrying them don't arrive at all. The orders keep coming anyway. Reality keeps diverging. Empire keeps drowning. One convoy at a time.
Convoy H-71, November 8, 1944, Philippine Sea. Tanker Captain Matsuda watches the horizon through salt-crusted binoculars. 7 cargo vessels, 3 escorts, a screen that wouldn't stop a determined rowboat, let alone submarines. The sound arrives first, dull, underwater thunder, then geysers, massive eruptions of seawater, oil, and shredded steel. The Omurosan Maru breaks in half, 9,204 tons, folding like paper. His radio man shouts, no, screams, torpedoes, multiple tracks.
Matsuda swings the wheel hard starboard, not fast enough. The first torpedo passes 10 meters astern. He sees the wake, that terrible white line cutting through dark water. The second hits amidships with a sound like the world splitting. The deck jumps, rivets pop like gunshots, steam screams from ruptured pipes. Below deck, a young stoker named Hayashi is thrown against scalding machinery. His skin sizzles. He smells himself cooking and realizes with crystalline clarity that he's about to die not from drowning, but from burning alive in a ship that's simultaneously flooding and on fire. The tanker lists. Oil, thick black oil, precious oil pours from gashed holes. 20,000 barrels, enough to fuel a fighter wing for a month. It spreads across the ocean's surface, catches fire from electrical sparks, transforms the sea into a burning lake. Matsuda abandons ship. The water is warm. That's wrong. Water this deep should be cold. Then he realizes it's warm from oil, from fire, from the dissolution of everything industrial civilization requires to function. USS Flasher breaks surface 2,000 yards out. Through the flames, Matsuda watches the submarine crew scanning for survivors. They don't fire again. They don't need to. 3 ships, 4 torpedoes, 16,000 tons. One morning's work. The submarine dives. The convoy burns. Japan starves a little more.
Physics doesn't care about courage. American Mark 14 torpedoes, 21 inches diameter, 3,000 pounds, 643-pound Torpex warhead, terminal velocity 46 knots, effective range 4,500 yards, depth control problematic until September 1943, then lethally accurate. The math is unforgiving. A single torpedo striking below the waterline creates hydrostatic shock. The explosive force multiplies against the ship's hull, exceeding design tolerances by orders of magnitude. Riveted seams fail, bulkheads rupture, compartmentalization collapses. Japanese merchant vessels, typically 5,000 to 10,000 gross tons, single-skin hulls, minimal subdivision, cargo holds prioritizing volume over survivability. They were designed for commerce, not combat. A single Mark 14 can sink a 7,000-ton freighter in minutes. The Americans develop acoustic homing torpedoes by 1944, weightless, intelligent death, one submarine commander calls them. Japanese countermeasures, virtually non-existent. No effective sonar, radar not deployed on escorts until June 1944, anti-submarine weapons inferior to Allied equivalents. Sources disagree on exact sinkings. JANAC reports 1,200 merchant ships, totaling approximately 5 million tons destroyed by submarines. Some historians argue figures are conservative, potentially missing smaller vessels and damage that led to later sinkings. Here's what's certain. 54.6% of all Japanese naval and merchant losses came from submarines. In 1944 alone, 603 merchant ships, 2.7 million tons, vanished. That's 7,397 tons daily, every single day. The bottleneck wasn't just sinking ships, it was replacement capacity. Japan's shipyards could build perhaps 700,000 tons annually. They're losing 2.5 million tons annually. The differential is death. An engineer's calculation, at current loss rates, the merchant fleet ceases functional existence by January 1945. They're wrong. It happens in December 1944.
After that, Japan isn't a maritime empire. It's an island surrounded by submarines, drowning in arithmetic.
Letters home. Stop making sense. Private Watanabe writes from Rabaul, "We eat well, morale is high, victory is certain." His mother in Hiroshima receives the letter in April 1945. She hasn't eaten meat in 8 months. Rice ration, 1.8 ounces daily. She weighs 82 pounds. She doesn't recognize the son who wrote such lies. In Osaka, school children are mobilized to factories. 14-year-old Yuki operates a lathe 12 hours daily. Her hands bleed, not from cuts, from malnutrition. Skin splits at the knuckles, refuses to heal. Vitamin C deficiency, protein deficiency, calorie deficiency. She watches a classmate collapse mid-shift, just falls. The supervisor doesn't call a doctor, he calls a replacement worker. In Tokyo, a judge named Yamaguchi refuses to buy black market food on principle. "I will not violate rationing laws," he tells his family. By October 1947, he's dead. Starvation. His crime? Believing in rules while the system collapsed. The psychological fracture runs deeper than hunger. People watch officials proclaim victory while reality screams defeat. They hear radio broadcasts about industrial production while factories sit empty. They attend mandatory rallies celebrating certain victory while their children turn skeletal. Cognitive dissonance becomes national policy. A neighborhood association leader in Yokohama organizes a prosperity drive, collecting metal for the war effort. Residents surrender pots, gates, temple bells. He watches it pile up and realizes there's nowhere to send it. No trucks have fuel, no trains have space, no ships exist to transport it. But they collect anyway, because stopping means admitting the truth. A civilian named Tanaka keeps a diary. May 1945. Today we ate grass. Tomorrow we will eat tree bark. The day after, I don't know what we will eat. But the radio says we're winning. The mind breaks before the body. Both break eventually.
They try everything. First, convoy tactics. Merchant ships sail in groups with destroyer escorts. American submarines respond by wolf pack tactics. More targets, same result. Second, depth charges. Japanese Type 95 pattern, 150-kilogram explosive, 90-meter effective radius. Problem? Requires detecting submarines first. Japanese sonar lags 2 years behind Allied technology. They're fighting blind. Third, air patrols. The Imperial Navy assigns aircraft to submarine hunting. By 1944, fuel scarcity grounds most of them. The planes exist, the gasoline doesn't. An intelligence officer studies captured American equipment, a Mark 14 torpedo, intact, recovered from shallow water. He disassembles it carefully, documenting every component. The engineering sophistication terrifies him. Gyroscopes, depth sensors, arming mechanisms so precise they make Japanese equivalents look medieval. His report goes nowhere. Replicating this technology requires machine tools, steel alloys, and precision manufacturing capacity that no longer exists. They try route alteration, hugging coastlines where submarines can't operate. Problem: B-29s mine coastal waters. Operation Starvation deploys over 12,000 mines in Japanese harbors and shipping lanes by March 1945. Coastal shipping collapses. 35 of 47 vital convoy routes abandon operations. They try improvisation, converting fishing boats to cargo vessels, using submarines for supply runs to isolated garrisons. It's like filling a swimming pool with an eyedropper while someone drains it with a fire hose. A staff officer proposes the unthinkable: abandon outlying territories, concentrate resources on defending the home islands. He's dismissed, not for strategic failure, for defeatist thinking. Some sources suggest the submarine campaign's effectiveness was partly accidental. American torpedoes were defective until late 1943, but once corrected, the destruction became systematic, mechanical, unstoppable. The truth crystallizes in Admiral Toyoda's office November 1944. A subordinate reports, "We've lost functional control of sea lanes." How long until starvation? 6 months, maybe. Countermeasures? Silence. There are none. Never were.
The final revelation is simple. Japan didn't lose at Midway, didn't lose at Leyte Gulf, didn't lose when B-29s burned Tokyo. Those were symptoms, not causes. They lost when the first submarine slipped below the surface, when the first convoy vanished, when the first warehouse clerk realized the mathematics didn't work. By August 1945, the statistics are apocalyptic. 1,042 calories daily, 65% of subsistence minimum. Industrial production at 20–30% of pre-war levels. Rice harvest 68.8% below previous year. Half of 72 million people living in famine zones. The atomic bombs ended the war, but the war was already over. Submarines had strangled the empire. Arithmetic had killed the dream. The merchant fleet, 6 million tons in 1941, was less than 1.5 million tons by surrender. Over 4.7 million tons destroyed, 54.6% by submarines, 1,200 ships, thousands of sailors, millions of civilians who starved because food couldn't reach them, froze because coal couldn't be delivered, died in bombed-out factories that couldn't produce because steel never arrived. In post-war Japan, survivors remember not the battles, but the hunger. Not the defeats, but the emptiness. Not the warriors, but the ordinary people who watched their nation consume itself while officials filed reports documenting a victory that existed only on paper. The lesson echoes: wars aren't won by courage, they're won by logistics, supply chains, industrial capacity, and the unglamorous arithmetic of replacement rates versus loss rates. Sometimes the greatest weapon is patience and mathematics. Every event, number, and name in this documentary has been verified through historical documented sources.